It's the right time, but the wrong place. And what I mean by that is like, it's something that you can start to engage in my posts at that time. You can start to build rapport with me at that time, but it's not the right time to sell.
Salespeople have forgotten that it's not about selling, it's about consultancy. It's about being there to show them a product, and it could be your service or it could be someone else's service or product. Your job is to really connect the human side of it. Find out what the pain point is, try to support them, and if your product matches or connects with them, then it makes a lot of sense. Hey John, dude, you've been tearing up sales guys on LinkedIn here recently. You're getting a lot of engagement with that, yeah?
I mean, so brands get so many emails these days, right? And no one's talking
It's
about it.
not just brands though. It's I
everybody.
get
Same
emails.
here.
Dude, my spam box is filled with
Like,
crap.
it's just too much. And the reality is, I used to be in sales, so I offered some unsolicited advice on how to better target DMs. And then the engagement levels.
But they're so mad though. They get mad at you. Don't you get angry emails back? Like
Yeah,
people are mad.
I've gotten a few hate emails.
It's perfect for this pod that we're about to shoot here about sales and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Guys ready to go?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's
All right.
go.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Awesome Pod, where we talk a lot. E-com is the path that we walk a lot. From 4 point of views when we're talking shop. Amir from the agency and Jimmy from SaaS. John has an Android, but give him a pass. Cause he's an operator building brands like a carpenter. And that's Brian, he is the marketer. Like I said, this the Awesome Pod, where we talk a lot. E-com is the path that we walk a lot. From 4 point of views when we're talking shop.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Awesome Pod, a show about perspective from the eyes of an agency, SaaS operator, and marketer, and focused on the D2C, e-commerce, and retail space. All right, let's go ahead and introduce everyone. John Roman, Android-loving survival king. How you doing, dude?
Good, I'm ready to talk
You
about sales
ready?
people.
You ready to talk sales and smash on that? Yeah? All right. Amir Grasinich, the Sailing Sales Agency. Oh, we're going to teach you something about your new sales model that you mentioned you're going to have. But Prince of Bosnia, how you doing, brother? You good?
Better? Are you doing better?
You doing better than
Last week you were a little
Little grouch.
grouchy.
He was hangry, or did we have to go to the bathroom?
He had to go to the bathroom, but
We
he
are the
was-
bathroom
No,
guys. Remember that?
I was less frustrated with you. I was more frustrated with myself. I didn't articulate my message enough, and the deeper I went, the worse it got.
All right, Brian, the self-proclaimed funniest dude on LinkedIn, man. You ready to talk about salespeople? I feel like you're a sales guy, so this will be really fun.
Hell yeah, brother.
All right, and I
Oh, yeah, brother, what?
he's drinking a cold beverage right now, so it's sinking in already.
ready.
I mean, it is after.
I hope we
noon
don't have to
somewhere.
blur that out because of.
I got
He's,
my hand over
he's
it.
covering
He's got his
it.
hand
Yeah,
over
we're
it.
not saying what it is.
Oh, okay.
All right. And my name is Jimmy. I'm the moderator of the brain, the man of the people, and email dude in here. All right. So if you're listening to this pod and you want to hear unfiltered hot takes from us, jump over to awesomepod.com, sign up for our newsletter, and join us weekly as we drop all sorts of hot takes. And if you want to hang out with us in real life, well, the Awesome Pod will be on stage at Commerce Roundtable, April 25th in Miami. CommerceRoundtable.com. Sign up for your tickets. Get your tickets now, and we'll see you there. And come hang out, and maybe you can anger Amir in person, real person too. All right, guys. Today we're diving into a topic that's close to all our hearts: sales. All right, it's called the lifeblood of a business. I mean, Amir earlier in one of our goal setting pods said that he's going to become a sales led organization with his agency side of things, and we'll talk a lot about that. And one of the things that I've really noticed is that there's a really interesting thing that's going on, and it's evolving ultimately, right, with sales. So I want to talk about sales and the art of sales that I believe is disappearing. I'm going to set the stage a little bit because I want to tell a little story because I feel like there's a little bit here. So, my original career, I'm talking back 2001 as I'm dating myself, I started in the car sales world. And I believe car salespeople are better than the average salesperson these days because they, when I was in car sales, we got pounded in like strategy and art and like teaching word tracks and all this stuff. But when you see a modern salesperson today, they're really not that great. And I think we're starting to see that, especially in the way that they're trying to communicate, the cold outreach. There's hunters and closers and all that stuff. And everyone wants to be a closer. We know that. But the reality is you've got to be good at all of them, and you've got to be a well-rounded salesperson. And I know that John has a big sales background. I personally, run sales in every organization that I've ever built. And I love that, right? And Brian, natural sales guy, gift to gab. He may offend you a little bit, but he's working towards it. And Amir is working towards the sales methodology here as he gets away from from just word of mouth, and he realizes that's how he's going to scale. So I want to talk about sales and what your take is, but let's start with this. Do businesses today, and I want to talk about e-commerce first and talk about that side, and we can talk about all the different things, but sales, like, how do you look at this? You guys get tons of cold emails each and every day. You guys get hammered by different like offerings and different things that are happening. Do you think it works? Do you think it doesn't work? How does it work for you?
So, I mean, it works to a certain degree, right? But the conversion rates, if you will, the metrics that you typically track sales have drastically changed.
What do you think? Do you think they're getting less personal? Do you think the automations are ruining it? Like,
well, the technology has made it too easy.
Yeah.
And has the automations, the use of AI, it's ruined it to a certain extent, which has made it less effective. And I'm a strong believer, which on the post I share, like there's a new formula on how to get to the decision maker, how to get them to listen to you, have the call, have the appointment, have the demo, and how to buy.
Yeah.
It's changed.
now you hammer at people, or you hammer at sales, and you blur out the thing and you don't call them out. You should call them out, in our humble opinion. We're still waiting for that, just like you tell us to call everything out.
People get their feelings hurt. So
I know,
don't.
but the reality is like, yeah, you're right. Like, a lot of people are getting lazy. Is that what the word you would think is? Or are they getting desperate? Like, how do you think about this as you think about the sales professional?
It's lazy, related to, 15 years ago around, you get in the car, you're going to your friend's house, you're going somewhere, you print out the MapQuest.
Yeah.
And then you had that GPS thing you could
the
plug
Garmin's.
in, right?
Garmin's.
Yes, the
Garmin's.
Garmin's.
And now it's on your phone, it's possibly integrated with your car. The reality is, the other day I didn't have my phone out and I had to get somewhere without it. And
Was it hard?
it was more difficult than I'd like to admit. But the reality is, it's because we've allowed technology to make our life easier.
Yeah.
The same thing's true. You have all these automation systems, the Marketos of the world, right? The HubSpots that just literally automate so much of it. It's taken the need for the skill away. So the salespeople have become not lazy maliciously or on purpose. They've just become lazy, and their skills have been unsharpened because of the technology. The problem is everyone's using the technology, which makes it ineffective.
Do you think it's also lack of education and like rigor that's happening? Like, there's all these trainings. You ever heard like Sandler training?
I've taken Sandler.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't think I've ever met a modern salesperson today, especially on, let's just say, like e-commerce. Who's the number one people who sell after them? It's either agency or SaaS. I would say most of your salespeople have not probably gone through anything.
So I think leadership has made the mistake of saying, oh, well, the technology makes it easy. We're not going to invest in the training and development via sales methodologies like Sandler. They're not doing them.
Amer, do you you've got salespeople on your team. Do you look at their previous sales education or their experience and say, hey, how are you up leveling and staying on sharp and being cutting edge when they're working on sales? Like, how do you evaluate your salespeople?
I hate to admit this, but I think I'm a wrong person to ask it. And the reason is my sales team doesn't have to do a lot of hunting.
So I don't think that's acceptable. I don't think that's
not
the right
acceptable.
answer.
Hunting is not the hunting is one side of it. Closing is
Yeah,
much
yeah.
bigger of an art.
Closing, controlling the sales cycle, making sure you're talking to all decision makers. You're proactively
hunting's
knowing what
just
the
top funnel.
objections are going to be and how to overcome them, how to shorten the sales cycle, how to find out who the other influencers and people besides the decision maker matter. There's all these variables. It matters. Warm lead or not, you got to close it.
So I 100% agree. That's what I was getting to.
Good.
There's two sides to sales. There's two.
He's back.
He's back.
No, there's two sides to sales. There's a art of hunting and knowing how to hunt and how to create relationships out of nothing. And then once you're there, there's that art of building trust and contacting all the salespeople and really getting it over the line. What I was trying to get to is I can't really speak on the first part of it. The second part is for us is how do we push the deal forward? How do we draw the right people in the right times? And not just from the prospect standpoint, but also from our internal standpoint. When do we need engineer on? When do I need to get involved?
Sure.
When does my team get involved? I do look at that.
But do you invest in it? Like, do you as a business owner, as someone who relies on sales to be able to make people, are you investing in your salespeople to educate themselves and get better and improve in sales?
Like going to conferences and all of that?
No, not going to conferences to
like
sell.
having trainings. Sandler methodology, like investing in sales training.
Yeah, I mean, I lead a team. I have one-on-ones with the sales team. We go through objections. We strategize to figure out where are you failing. Like, for example, I have 2 sales guys. We just hired another one, third one. They both have 2 different things they need support on to develop, and we invest into that. So I've never not pushed my team to evolve.
So you're putting value in training, but you're the trainer. You're not going to.
You're not going out and making.
You're training
you're
yourself.
Not investing in. And that's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Like,
okay, that was
are
my
you
question.
investing into salespeople to be better? Because look, you just said conferences. Oh, you're sending them to conferences, but you're sending them to go hunt. You're not sending them to go learn.
Conferences. I mean, like sales conferences to learn educational.
Oh, you sent them to sales conferences.
No, I don't. That's why I was
okay.
asking. We haven't done that. Yeah.
Brian, I'm going to come back to you now. Now, you obviously, I know you're not a sales guy, but believe it or not, you're a sales guy, right?
You have the skill set.
You have the
that would
skill
be
set. You have
successful.
the gift of gab. You obviously understand. You're trying to close things, right? Always be closing, doing all that stuff. As you watch and you're in your seat and you're getting approached by salespeople, what do you think is going on right now in the market?
So I actually have a kind of cool thing for folks that are looking to improve their sales team. Look at the companies with bad product or services that make a lot of revenue or have raised a lot of money. One bad experience that I had with a software company that we talked about, the one props that I gave them was I said, your sales team is the best I've ever seen.
They do have a really good sales team.
Unbelievable.
They sold us so
right?
quickly.
The issue is, I think, in the current landscape is folks with a great product or service neglect sales.
Because they think their product will sell.
Correct. And then on the flip side of it, sales is often, for these companies that I just talked about, put on the forefront of it because they know they don't have a great product or service. There's very few people that align the level of sales with the product or service that they're selling. And that's the current issue right now, where back in the day, like you're talking about with car dealerships, that's just one example. You had to be a great salesman. You were selling a great car, but you also had to be a great salesman. Now we're almost relying on technology to act as top of funnel and the product and service selling it. And if you don't have something like a great product or service on bottom of funnel to close it, you need to have an incredible sales team because that product or service is so bad. So I think the way in which the funnel's set up with sales teams, even at the medical device and pharmaceutical level, right? Like all of my friends and family are in farm or med device, and they're just like not great salespeople. They're not. They're just essentially capturing a touch point territory for these, large drug companies or device companies. Just put a name on a shirt and talk to a doctor, but there's no true sale that's occurring, where before that did have to happen. So I think it's strange how the landscape shifting with product or service being put above sales, but then on the flip side of it, when a company should be working on improving their product or service, they're investing too much time into sales to compensate.
1, 2, 3 into the phone. Guess who it is? Omnisend is at the door. Tools that'll make your brand break through. Pretty damn awesome, just ask the crew. Trusted by over 125,000, 5,800 reviews, you can count it. Go ahead and try it like Elf on the Shelf. The results you'll get will speak for themselves. Do their best to impress with their SMS. Do their best to address an email address. So forget juggling apps, this ain't a circus. Omnisend was built just for you with a purpose. So what are we doing? Why the delay? Head to omnisend.com today. Hey, yeah.
Let's go down to the root of the problem. Do you guys think it starts with monetization, like the monetary side? And what I mean by that is this, right? In car sales, I don't know if you guys know, but most car salesmen, they don't make a salary. There's no base salary. You are on a commission-only program. You get a draw where you're getting an advance on your commission check for your commission for the next month, right? But the reality is the weird thing about sales that's really interesting in car sales, which is why I'm going back to it, because I feel like that's the only true place where salespeople still truly exist at the deepest level. If they don't make sales, they don't have a job within just a couple months because they don't eat. They don't live and survive. But in SaaS sales, for example, I'll give you an example. Dude, it's base compensation $70,000, $80,000, $100,000, $150,000 a year on your base salary before your commissions. Remember, I always joke, if everything fails in my life, I'm going to become a Salesforce AE. Well, Salesforce AE at an enterprise level makes $240,000 a year on base compensation before they start earning their commissions and all the other things. And they've got all the support in the world. They got sales engineers, BDRs, they got all this stuff. And all they're ultimately doing is the one thing they're supposed to do is just build a rapport and create sales. Do you guys think that monetary is a potential problem and that people have approached it wrong?
I think it's a variable.
Okay.
I don't know if it's the problem. So I go back to my early years experience. So 15 years ago, 2009, 2010, 2011 timeframe, I'm running a sales team, 10 people, giving them all base salaries. Now they're not the base salaries of today, right?
Sure.
Base salaries range between 35 and 60.
Sure. Which is still high.
Yeah.
Then they had an uncapped limit.
Uncapped on commissions.
Commissions, of course.
But the BDRs didn't exist back then.
Yeah.
You had to find, hunt, kill, eat. You owned it from farm to table. So, but there was always sales training. I'm assuming in the car sales, there was constant role playing
all the time.
And how do you handle objections? You're constantly working on the skill of being a salesperson.
Yes, they weren't just chasing leads.
And the automotive industry still has that. Not to hate and call you out, but like, I would bet a lot of money that you aren't daily role playing with your salespeople. There's not the time to do that, right?
No, don't.
But when that exists, the sales skills are just next level. And that's why car salespeople, and yes, you're right, product's important, but guess what? There's a dealership there. They're all together. There's like 8 I can see, right? Yeah. And if it's a bad salesperson who's not doing good, not controlling it, not keeping them there, not trying to put the emotional attachment to close, they can go and get a car, and a car is a car to a certain extent.
The newest version of car salesmen that I think are actually the best salesmen today are solar salesmen.
Oh yes, solar and energy.
They have their Monday hoorahs. They do all their working sessions. They have their training, and they are a commission-based sales group. And I've seen some impressive ones that have showed up on my doorstep. And the best salespeople are always face to face. It's very hard to train. Cold sales, phone sales is a completely different ballgame, but the best salespeople in the world are face to face.
Even in this remote world, I think that one thing I've learned is like a lot of people will try to centralize their sales team, put them in office for a reason, even though the rest of their team might be remote. And I think there's a reason for that because people are learning, listening, role playing, and different things. But they're also that's how they get educated along the way. I think that as you look, okay, so I'm going to tell a story. So there's a story about HubSpot. You guys all know HubSpot, right? So HubSpot's story is really interesting. When they first started, they went from like $0 to $27 million of ARR without a good product. The product was terrible. People were churning all out of the way. But the thing that they were really good at was they had this structured education where I can't remember the founder, Brian, whatever his name is. He would basically train the salespeople to follow one of 3 tracks. They would have a track for each person, and they would follow this word track, and they would, have objection handling and all this stuff along the way. And it would educate them so heavily. They probably had an experience like that sales company that you had, where that was probably someone they followed that playbook, and they were able to train their salespeople to be so freaking good that they could outsell a bad product or service that they had. It wasn't until they got to 27 they realized that they had to fire the entire engineering org, rebuild the product from the ground up for 2 years while maintaining an ARR because their sales team was so good, right? But now if you only have a good product and you don't have good salespeople who can't tell the story, can't objection handle, can't convince. This is the thing that I get most annoyed about the modern salesperson today. They can tell you all the things about the product. They can give you the case study. They can show you the demo. They can do all this stuff, but they can't close worth of crap. I always say they can't close a storm door in a hurricane. They're so weak. They can't ask for the sale. Yeah, they can't push people. They can't convince people. And so that leads me to the first question here: cold calls. Let's talk about that. Is that reinventing right now? How do you guys think about this? You guys get cold called? How do you guys pick
we're
up?
talking traditional cold call as well? Yeah.
Cold call, cold emailed, right? Cold call. Do you get cold called?
Not as much as email or LinkedIn, but yeah.
But why do you think?
But let's go. But I think we call a phone call, an email, and a LinkedIn DM. They're all cold.
Yeah, they're all.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you find that one channel is more effective than other? Think about this. How about I'm going to reposition this. When's the last time you guys have had a cold call that has been effective that's worked on you? They don't work on you. That's just nothing, huh?
The ones that I like more are the ones on LinkedIn that are more personalized. I don't really, because a lot of email stuff either goes to spam or it looks like spam. And when you see the human emailing you with their photo and it make it personalized in LinkedIn, I think the best cold calls that I've gotten have come from LinkedIn.
So to be fair, I've gotten some that have worked in the sense that I've engaged.
Yeah.
And it was because it was 100% not automated, not AI. They pull random references. Hey, I saw that you used to play poker. Like, I played in the World Series in 2021. Were you still playing? Like, literally taking the sales side out of the equation, trying to get my guard down with a human
Building
element.
rapport, basically.
Building rapport in a cold thing, and then trying to get the conversation.
Do you think this is generational at any level?
Possibly.
Like, that generational, you guys don't trust the cold call, where the next earlier generation believed that the cold call was so important? I'm talking about like the Salesforce playbook. We've all heard that terminology. That playbook has been in years and years of existence, and basically it was cold calling, social media connections, emailing, anything they can do to connect to you, and they'd find every avenue. It worked for many, many years, and many large organizations were built. But today it seems like, okay, let's just say the medium of a phone call is not as effective, but maybe they're just not calling as much.
Yeah, I also think we're living in a different landscape now, where even maybe the old generation had to sort of rely on cold calls because there wasn't an easy way for the consumer, everyday person, to do their own due diligence and their own research, and there wasn't an avenue. They couldn't just open their phone or go on the internet and kind of like decide for themselves what avenue they wanted to go down, what product they wanted to buy, service they wanted to take over, insurance that they wanted to purchase, because they had no way of knowing that unless the person showed up on their doorstep, right? So a lot of the old generation found out about things due to cold calling. And today that's just not the case anymore, which makes them less effective, because when you're getting hammered with spam and you see people you've never heard of, you already have a red flag that goes up, because you're like, I would have heard of this guy if they were, someone that I should be engaging with. So I think it's different too, just based upon just generational change and distribution of media and the ability for us to do whatever we want and the touch of a button.
Is it a more educated buyer, maybe?
100%.
Amir, I'm going to flip this to you as you hire salespeople in your team. Like, what do you think, as you're hiring someone, distinguishes a great salesperson versus just an average one that you pass on?
I'll work backwards. One part is when I do an offer on a salary offer sheet. If they're going to negotiate it, I will withdraw.
They don't negotiate it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you can negotiate for yourself, how are you going to negotiate for us? That's like a red flag for me.
So you give them an offer, and if they just accept it, you say no? Just kidding.
No, I don't say just kidding. It's a red
It's a
flag.
test, you failed. Huh? It's not really a job.
Yeah, because like I don't do a formal offer letter. As in, like, what are you looking for? We discuss it, and I say like, hey, we're thinking we can do X, Y, and Z. Like, how does it work for you?
If they don't counter, you're.
Yeah, I don't.
Interesting. I don't know if I agree with that.
I don't know if I agree with that either, because like, if I'm having a very real conversation with you and telling you, and it's truly aligned, I'm not greedy and selfish. So if what I'm looking for aligns with what you're offering, I'm not going to try to nickel and dime you.
So let's say if I go to and I say, hey, my range for this salary for this position is $80,000 to $100,000. Okay. And I go to and I say, and you come back, I don't come back to you or whatever, and you wouldn't want the salesperson to be like, wait, why am I not worth $100,000? Where did I fail?
Yeah, but it could be experience. I mean, I would imagine prior to that conversation, I've gotten an understanding of where I see myself.
Okay. That's one aspect. Let's continue on. What about qualities? I'm talking about, like, what do you look for when you're trying to find somebody?
To me, it's very important, because we're in a very technical field, is understanding the landscape and how a landscape works.
What does that mean?
So, for example, we work like deeply with Shopify.
Okay.
If you don't have either experience like with Shopify or another platform, if you potentially don't have experience with a SaaS that has worked in this space or an agency in this space, I think it's a very high climb for me, and this is reflective of us as an agency, to what you guys said earlier, to train them, to get them to that point. I don't think we're at the point where we can invest into that. And something you alluded in the previous podcast, like you want to hire people who can produce right away. The big thing for me is how they put in the time to build trust with me. So like one of the other red flags for me is like when I have a call with somebody, if they don't send me a follow-up email, they're like disqualified. So I kind of treat the process of the interview with them. It's like, how are they selling themselves, their experience, and what they can do to build their trust, to convince me like they're the next hire that can take us to that level that I shared with them. With those
The
expectations.
follow-up email, I'm a big believer in, but I feel like it started to be lost on the current generation
Sure.
of the workforce. No one told them.
Yeah, no one told them. That's a good way to look at it.
But if you say no one told them, and then you're hiring somebody in a sales position to get to the point, like, what are they going to have a call with a lead and not?
Oh no, I mean it's
Yeah.
If they crushed everything else, I'm having that conversation before the offer letter goes out. I'm saying, hey, you didn't follow up. Help me understand why you didn't follow up, and let me explain to you why following up is important.
So one of
And
the
then
things.
BCC me on the follow-ups your first week.
So one of the things I do with every position, whether sales or not, that's maybe a little bit different, is in the first conversation, I don't expose anything that we're looking for.
Yeah.
I want to understand how they approach, how they view business and everything. I don't want to talk first and then cater to that conversation. I want to see what their approach to everything is and then say, okay, you shared all of this. Now, these are these expectations. Tell me, you told me X, Y, and Z. How would you shape that to this? You told me that. How would you shape it to that? And then I have them start to pitch me.
I think that's a personal preference. I think
Yeah.
I think doing the opposite of allowing them to cater is truly testing their sales acumen. If they're able to then cater the pitch to you, I think you're hoping they do the same thing.
If you're a great salesman,
Yeah.
you're going to pry during that conversation and look for the signals to find it out. But if I'm just going and exposing that, like we have leads that come to us that are open books and super easy to work with
Yeah.
them.
Then you have leads that aren't.
That they're not. So I want to kind of test, like, because I'm not exposing my cards, how are they continuing through the conversation and trying to find out what they should tell me that I'm looking for. And a lot of them, quite honestly, if they look at our website, who we work with, how we work, and all of this, they get half the picture. Then it's just like trying to figure out what my expectations are.
It's interesting. The way that you kind of characteristic how you look at a salesperson is very different than I would be looking at, because you were more worried about like the industry and this and that comes into place. I actually don't believe that industry matters that much for great salespeople.
So I'm on the same page
Yeah,
as you.
you know why?
You gave me a
Because
great sales guy, I'm good.
If you're a great sales guy, you'll figure it out. And you'll know exactly by the way the client talks about it. It doesn't matter where their background is from, Amir. If they are able to come in there, they can do their discovery process, which is to ask appropriate questions to learn what your pain points are, and to go through and be able to understand your pain points and to explain what you do and how it solves your problem. That's able to do, and then be able to go into a close and challenge that sale along the way and build rapport all the way along the way. They can sell anything. A great salesperson can sell anything. I mean, you can stick Brian right now. Brian does not, and I'm going to use Brian because it's a perfect example. He's not a sales guy, but he's a sales guy. He just doesn't know that, right? Like I know he knows that, but that's not what he does. He's marketing. But if I took Brian and told him to go work for this random company, he would do well. It wouldn't matter it doesn't matter what it is, because he understands the one thing that matters most, which is human connection. And he understands how to break through that. And he does it all the time. We were at the waitress last night and he was just trying to break through and build connection and get her to laugh. And eventually she liked us and started joking back with us.
She did in the beginning.
She didn't like him at all in the beginning. But he couldn't stop because that's his inner sales principle.
So-
right?
I agree with you 100% though.
So one caveat of that, while I agree with 98% of that, what I do understand is your salespeople also sometimes act in a public-facing capacity to the prospect, and almost in a sales engineering role too, because of the scope of work they have to put together. So yes, but I can think of several very successful salespeople that some I view as friends that they probably know who they are. They're not smart enough to do a technical sale.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's always that. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying like a mediocre salesperson versus a great salesperson, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, the skill set.
Yeah, the skill set is
the
unique.
most important thing.
So one of the reasons I take this approach, and I 100% agree with you where you're saying we're on the same page. One of the reasons I take this approach is when we hired Nick, who's my sales guy,
Who didn't have experience in e-com.
Yeah, he didn't have any experience.
But a good sales guy.
Very good salesman. It took him a while to find his rhythm. But one of the things, and even when he found it, and to this day, when I follow up with leads that we lose, or I connect with a partner and to give me some feedback, the answer was, we got on that call and they didn't like the experience that they brought to the table to talk about these topics. So there's like a level of human connection, which is the most important thing in my opinion. But then we have this layer that he's talking about, like you have to know the concept of Shopify. And when we were going against other agencies, they had more technical, like sales engineers leading the way. Just like when I get on a call, it's a whole different look when they're in the call. But we're getting there.
Are you going to have a sales engineer?
Yeah,
we do.
I think that's a solution.
Yeah, that's a solution. That's not. You can't
I
expect
would never have a sales
salesperson.
guy on the call alone.
Yeah. The thing is, we would have them on the first call. The first call is trust, it's qualification, or what I call it rather, disqualification. Find out why we wouldn't be able to work with them. And then
They call it discovery, by the way, just on terminology of sales.
Discovery call.
No, discovery call for us is different. So discovery for us is understanding requirements. Disqualification call for us understanding, do they have the budget? And is the time frame there? And what do their team look like? Are there any red flags in their team that?
But you don't. But calling a disqualification call isn't a public term that both sides use. Discovery call is.
Yes,
We're saying
that's
uses
what they
that.
call in professional sales. That's a discovery.
Yeah.
It might not be called discovery in your business, but that is what a discovery call is.
Okay. So that's basically kind of what we do. And then we'll bring in, whether it's I have to jump on, sometimes it's like my design team, because that's the most important part to them. And the build is not technical at all. And we make it kind of work that way. The reason I'm saying this and what you're saying the way, I'm admitting straight out that we do not have the sales structure right now to be able to take a non-e-commerce experienced salesman and bring him in where they would succeed.
Yeah, you don't have the structure.
Your sales are
So I think about, again, when I was running sales teams, so like I had my 10 reps and then I had a sales engineer. And that sales engineer, he was on calls all day too. Yep. We'd go through the day, we'd figure out the most technical ones where was needed. If there wasn't an overly technical one, he was just another sales support on that call. But having that, it took the need for the salesperson to get overwhelmed by a super technical sale to just have the technical smart person there.
Workplace 6, why struggle alone? Talk to other founders outside of your home. Communities thrive, so slide open your phone. Help you make strides, sit on top of the throne. Oh, whoa, solve your biggest challenges. Oh, whoa, help your checks and balances. Oh, whoa, this is how I salvage it. This a major key alert, just like DJ Khaled is. Apply for a buck, be a part of the workplace. 6:30, helping on your worst days. Surrounded by 9 figures, not in third place. Take a new direction like my home's on reverse plays. Yeah, join today. Workplace6.io. Tell them Awesome sent you.
Okay, let's flip this. On you guys, right? Do you guys have salespeople in your business?
We have one.
You have one?
Retail side. Yep.
Okay, so they go on sell retailers, right?
Yep.
Talk to us about them.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting one because that landscape's changed a little bit in regards to back in the day for independent pet stores. You used to have a crazy amount of spend for travel budgets because you needed to go to those individual stores, right? Where now these distribution companies that we work with, one of them PFX, Pet Food Experts, they now have distribution obviously set up, but then they also have their own internal people sales team and then a digital aspect of it as well. So the hardest part with independent pet is there's 2 phases for retail sales. There is getting into the store, being number one, which our team does. So, they'll travel around, they'll sample products, they'll educate the store owner and workers at the store about the products. And then once you get into a store, the hardest part is maintaining
the relationship,
your
to reorder,
relationship, right? To reorder. And that you don't need as big of a sales team as you used to in that regard. So the getting in is one thing, but then once you're in, having constant demos set up, which our sales team runs for especially like bigger chains, constant communication with the store owner when we go to different conferences, taking them out, right? So like one big thing that the guy that runs national is like, picture like a shorter version of me, just a little bit older. That's like the biggest thing for him is taking folks out to dinner, taking them out to golf, meeting with them up at conferences. Your traditional sales, but that element actually doesn't occur until after we get into the store. So that, to me, in our space, that stuff's more crucial after we get in. It's relatively easy to get into retail now. Anyone can pretty much get into retail compared to the past. It's just when you're in order for that store to push your product, in order for that store to reorder on a 3-4 week frequency, they need to.
So it's less of a salesperson, more like an account manager.
More of an
almost.
account manager, relationship manager.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What about you? Who's your salesperson?
So technically, we have one dedicated. So the non-dedicated, Richard, my business partner, our CFO, he has a sales background like I do. He'll get, and we don't have an official like dedicated siloed wholesale channel, but he'll sell 1 or 2 decent sized wholesale deals every month just because of the relationships. Because he procurement rolls to him too.
Sure.
So he has the relationships with so much of our industry, but our so that's kind of a pseudo role. The dedicated one is a phone guy.
Okay.
His name's Patrick. He 150 calls a day. He's calling past BattleBox customers.
So he's doing it as a retention sales.
Well, they've already churned.
Yeah, so it's like
Win back.
Yeah, but it's still like kind of like it's a win back sales. I guess.
Exactly. So
Okay.
yeah, so he's calling them, and it's. I mean, I wrote the original version. There's iterations since of the script, right? And it's this, and when they tell you this, that's the objection. This is how you overcome it, and it's very
How's the ROI on that?
really really good
I have a quick question for you guys out of curiosity.
because it's subscription.
With like the bad salesman thing and how we're looking at it, do you think the companies are at fault for bad salesmen because they are not supporting them
Yeah.
correctly?
100%.
100%.
I mean, it's
the company's fault.
It's a lack of like I talk about this about SaaS companies all the time, right? SaaS companies, where do they send their people? They don't send them ever to a education thing. They send them always to sales conferences, not sales conferences to go sell to and get leads, right? They're so hungry about leads and expectations of the numbers and the KPIs that they need to hit. They forget that in order to get them to do that correctly, they need to go train them and educate them. You guys have all been to plenty of conferences. How many bad salespeople have you guys encountered? They just come up to you and they just start trying to pitch you. But they don't understand that sometimes all it takes is just to say, "What's up, Brian? How are you?" Hey, talk to them. What do you do? And then start talking about their business. People like to talk about themselves, to build the rapport, to tell the stories. Oh yeah, Brian, like I met this other company, I would tell the story. If I was trying to sell to Brian right now, right? And we let's pretend you and I didn't go walk to this raw feeding thing, right? I would tell this exact story about how we walked to this place and walked in and no one helped me and blah, blah, blah. And this is all the thing. I would create relatability with him before I'd even talk to him about what I do and how we sell and how we'd help his business. You know what I mean? And that doesn't happen anymore because the training's not there.
And I think it's even to take a step back, 100% agree that sometimes I'm actually at a conference and I'm flattered when that happens because sometimes I will walk an aisle. Like, for example, I go to IRC every year because in Chicago it's just accessible. And I'll walk down the entire aisle and people are on their phones talking to each other. Like, I'm not even there. And it's like, holy crap, all these companies spend $15,000, $20,000 on a booth or whatever it is these days, and their sales guys are not doing anything with it.
This is the whole inbound mentality, though. You said, I have all inbound. So your mentality, your salespeople actually don't have to be as strong because the inbound mentality is I'm going to sit here and wait for people to come and say, can you help me? And you go, oh yeah, of course I can help you. It's much easier. But in most sales professionals, especially the ones that are emailing brands and getting out there, well, the reality is they need to go break the ice through, right? And look, I know the idea of writing a personalized email or message or phone call to each and every person is a lot of work, and there's a lot of tools these days. And I think part of the problem has been the reliance on tools. I mean, how have you guys felt about that? Reliance on tools and AI these days. Do you think that it's getting worse and worse?
It is. So we, as an example, unlike you, I'll just call the company out. Route.
Yeah, Route.
ROUTE.
So Route was one of my first victims of my sales post. They got I think it got like 400,000, but I didn't call them out that they were Route at the time. And I ripped it a new one. It was really, really, really bad. And it was clearly like bad AI.
Yeah.
My first celebratory sales post email of someone doing a really good job was a fellow Route person that saw it, knew it was them. And I ended up chatting with them about it because their email was really good. I ended up chatting with them. It's not a fit for us. But I asked some questions and they were using a agency supplied fully automation AI tool. And their route what, and I think they laid off 60% of their people.
75 actually.
Which is a wild number because Shopify changed that thing. The reality is though, prior to that, they weren't a small organization. And you've got to think with the success that they had, they have some smart people there with certainty and leadership. And they thought that going with an agency fully automated AI sales tool was the right move.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's all about efficiency, right? Like businesses are trying to find efficiency, generate leads and make sales and yada, yada, yada. But I would say that part of Route's thing was they did have a really great product, right? The word of mouth probably helped them spread like, oh, we can add this thing, add money to buy. Because I think the whole Route's pitch was like, if you do this shipping protection, it's like a self-insurance bubble, right? You make money.
And they're giving you like 60% of the money.
Yeah, they're kicking you back. So as a business, it sounds really attractive. So they were solving a pain point, which was like, hey, you can offload this cost and risk to your customers, and you can auto force them, and it's such a small little bit of money that no one will ever notice, right? That was the whole like pitch that they were giving out, and things have changed now because consumers have gotten annoyed by it ultimately, right? That's part of why Shopify is changing these things. So, I think that tools are interesting and the KPIs are interesting, but as a business, and you're talking to people listening to this, and they may be like SaaS companies or agencies listening right now, thinking about, what we're talking about, I think is really good to like educate the market. Like, if you're a brand, right, what would you like to approach if someone wants to contact you? Have you thought about that? Like, how would you react? Like, a good email, obviously, right? A really personal email is one thing, but what else works?
So, we're in this day and age. I saw one of Amanda's posts where she was talking about if everyone's an influencer, nobody is, right?
Yeah.
The reality is there's more and more presence, whether it's for personal brand or business reasons. The majority of people now do have social presence, right? And what I found works really well on me, and there's been probably half a dozen that have done this, and they're doing it because they're smart salespeople. They're interacting with my posts. They're engaging with it. They're leaving comments. They're ingesting my content for weeks, sometimes more than a month. And then they're sending a connection request. Hey, I'm really enjoying your content. And I accept it. No pitch. Continue liking it. And then they hit you with it.
And by then they've hit you enough, or you're starting.
I've already recognized the name.
Yep.
Because they're consistently engaging with my content. They're sometimes even adding value. Like they're building this relationship and giving me the usual social media little dopamine, and I like them because they're supporting what I'm doing. And then they pitch, and you know what? It might not be a fit. I might not buy it, but I'm gonna listen.
And you're at least responding.
I feel I'm humanly obligated because I can document in my head time that they've given me. I feel like I should listen to them.
Brian, you went off on someone recently about a product, and then you had a ton of salespeople hit you up. Tell us about that, man.
Yeah, that was crazy.
And we don't want to name the name because I know you guys are doing whatever, but what I really want to focus on is, did any of those salespeople actually capture your attention? Why?
None. Because they're...
So hold on, set the background for people that don't know.
Yeah, did you
you had
inherited
a product or service that
Correct.
you're upset about?
Correct.
And you made a post. Like, talk about that.
Correct,
and
yes.
then talk about the comments and follow people.
Yeah, so I inherited software that I just didn't like and felt like that we got screwed on. So I made a rant post on LinkedIn that went semi-viral in that particular sector in which that SaaS company provided us in. Other competitors in that space immediately when I made the post started sending me DMs and connection requests and, hey, I saw your post about X. We hear the same thing from clients coming to us. We'd love to schedule a demo call with you. Now, I understand the mentality of, wow, this person clearly has a pain point that they have to solve. But just like what John said, it's the right time, but the wrong place. And what I mean by that is it's something that you can start to engage in my posts at that time. You can start to build rapport with me at that time, but it's not the right time to sell. And I think SaaS companies now, especially, I think we're seeing probably the longest sales cycles ever, especially after all the money infiltrated the market, where they have to make X and hit metrics and hit returns, where realistically, that's not a realistic goal. So versus 10, 20, 30 years ago, whether we're talking software or whatever, sales cycles were a lot shorter and now they're longer. So they're approaching it the wrong way, trying to capture lead gen and sales with, one message, but it's at the completely wrong time.
Is it the sale? Yeah, it sounds like they get a bad rap because of this, is because they don't know how to go out and okay, so example, let's work this backwards, right? Brian makes a post. Let's put our sales hats on, John. Brian makes a post angry at this company about this thing, and you are a competitor. How do you approach it?
So I'm engaging with the post.
Yep.
I'm probably saying something little value but funny, meme-ish comment, shots fired, something like that. Knowing good and well he's going to see it. Obviously Brian chose violence that day, so I'm there for it. I'm supporting the violence. And Brian's going to see, shots fired, and he's going to see, based on the bio, clearly this person is in that space, so they really get it. And that I've just made my first imprint on him.
Got it. So I had this, the same thing happen in a client that I closed that I picked up off social media, for example. Same kind of thing. Guy complains. He's like, blah, 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 blah. You know what I did? I challenged him on that. I said, blah, 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 blah. And even though I was not even part of that product, I actually defended the product to take the perspective. And I said, but what would you have done? And it created a thread between us to create the conversation, eventually to go to DM. So in my case, I would have done the same thing to Brian. I would have gone down there, picked one topic that I think that he was most passionate about. I think it was actually the price more than anything, that you were sold the wrong thing and whatever. And I would actually start picking on Brian, what do you think would have been a better way to go after it, or position that in different ways to try to create
I think that's just as effective. Yeah. I agree 100%.
Yeah, and create the engagement to the point where the client, in my situation with this one, reached out to me to say, you make really good effective points. I'd like to, why do you think this is happening for us? And why do you think, and I try to switch myself from being a salesperson to a consultant. And I think this is part of the problem that's happening in this market. And this is why I'm driving towards this, is salespeople have forgotten that it's not about selling, it's about consultancy. It's about being there to show them a product, and it could be your service or it could be someone else's service or product. But your job is to really connect the human side of it, find out what the pain point is, try to support them, and if your product matches or connects with them, then it makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. It's okay to say no. Right? It's okay to say, hey, Brian, my product's not going to actually solve the problem you have. Just because I'm a competitor to the overall landscape, your problem is different than what I solve. However, I could either recommend or I could just be a supportive person to connect. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too now we're for brands, right? Our best salespeople are our influencers.
Yeah.
Because they built a brand and they're distributing education. And I think that's one thing that you hit the nail on with SendLane, is you built your own personal brand at the same time of giving out and providing education and distributing your knowledge, where that's one unlock that any SaaS people that are listening to this for is whatever space you're in, try to become as proficient as possible on that while building a brand around it, and then educating and building that audience, because then people come to you. And I think that's the big unlock with SaaS, is once you figure out how to get people to you instead of the other way around, that's when you have a huge...
And it can attract people. Not only that, but there's also the people who do it wrong, right? You see it wrong. See, here's the reality. If you're an account executive, let's be honest here. You see the title account executive on their profile thing, it's probably a turnoff right away, right?
Yeah.
You might not as much because you like salespeople, but for Brian, for example, I'm going to use Brian for example in here, and Amara's good too because you get sold to as an agency all the time too. But when you see someone who's an account executive, is it an instant guard up for you? Do you go, oh, this is just another sales guy, no matter what, right?
Yeah, agreed.
How do you feel about it?
To me, it's not an instant guard up. I'm welcoming. I'm kind of in the same, because I sell as well, so I get it. I get the hustle. To me, it's more of the guard in the way they approach it. And I think everything that we said, I think just a lot of sales guys, they try to hit a home run with one message.
Yeah,
which is just kind of crazy to me. But I'm very welcoming. I get a lot of messages from BDMs and everything saying, hey, can we get on a call? Especially from other agencies that want to sell their like developers to
Sure.
us. It's like, hey, let's explore opportunities. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to get on a call unless you say, hey, I have an opportunity for you, because I know what you're going to sell me. And that's like when my guard is up. To those people, I actually don't even answer to, because the pitch is so stupid. To most people, like, they have a service or a SaaS solution and they reach out to me and they get to the point, actually, like with a lot of stuff, you call out what their offer is and how they can make my life better. I'll tell them, hey, not right now, follow up in Q2, whatever the case is. But yeah, I'm depending what the first message looks like, my guard might be up or down.
So I'd rather get an email from an account executive than a CEO trying to sell me.
Of course.
Yeah.
I want to see account executive because it also gives me some validation that they're of, in theory, a certain size and
structural,
they've already
yeah.
had enough success.
That's a good point.
There's some
That's a good point.
validation.
And I also argue that like part of this problem exists in that a lot of SaaS organizations silo SaaS and marketing too far apart. Yeah. And what I'm talking about there is like, dudes, like sales, like copywriting, right? Being able to talk over words is not a sales skill per se. Meaning, like, it's not typical to have a sales person who's great at copywriting. What you do is you have a great marketer team or someone who's going to be able to help support that person and write better conversations, because the sales guy's going to be great probably when they get on a phone call. But before they get on the phone call, when they're hunting and they're trying to get engaged, how do you get engaged? Through great email, great attention, a great social post, whatever that is. But salespeople don't have that skill. So, oh, go ahead.
There's a question on that. So given everything that we said, like when it comes to like engaging pain points and things like that, like, but you wouldn't expect the marketer to write those messages for them. They still have to know how
They
to
do, and there's a human aspect to it,
Yeah,
of course, and there's
yeah.
things there, and it's a skill, right?
Yeah,
Again,
yeah.
it's skills of learning, and what it sounds like to me, and this is where I'm going with the next thing. It seems like the skill of a salesperson is changing and evolving ultimately. It's no longer just as simple as like, can you get on a call and do a demo, and can you know what I mean? Like, there needs to be more skills, it seems like, when you're looking for that next modern day salesperson these days. You need someone who can write. You need someone who has a different level of EQ ultimately than you might have had in the past. It's no longer just a hard-hitting closer or hard-hitting person that can just pitch you ultimately.
Yeah, the traditional, parts of like a Sandler methodology that when we would run appointments, we had the 8 steps of the appointment.
Yes.
They were in order. You had to hit them, defining next steps, closing at the end, asking questions. Like literally you had to hit steps,
And even
right?
all the methodology of how you're supposed to challenge
and
them, right?
and the reason is because you're trying to just control the sales cycle and get it as condensed and quickly as possible. And to Brian's point, like sales cycles are now just naturally extending, and I think it changes the dynamic of it. It really does.
I think what Brian said, I think earlier when we started talking about generational, when you think about it today with salespeople and everyone else, when was the last time maybe somebody picked up the phone to tell you happy birthday? We are less and less spending.
On my birthday,
Yeah,
I mean,
No, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't explain.
do
saying
you get
the
more
rapport's
text
not
happy
there.
birthday or more phone calls happy birthday?
Wait, text.
Wait, text, that's
yeah.
my point.
No, okay.
Yeah. So we're spending less time on the phone, so we're less eager to pick the phone call
So
up.
we're just becoming
Yeah.
impersonal.
In personal. And then before, like, to think about exactly what you were talking about, Brian, with your account manager, people used to fight for time to play golf, to take people out to dinners and all of that. And at that time, we're trying to leverage automation to get people's attention because everyone was calling them. It was too much. So it was like, hey, let me sneak in their inbox to get their attention, then get on a call. But now we shifted so far to the other side where it's automation, and no one is taking the time to get to know people, invest the time, because we all want these like instant returns with like one message, 2 messages.
I think you're 100% right, but that's been what the messaging I've been saying is trying to get back to the human connection. And in your example too, like that's where the success is forming the human connection and not pitching.
Yeah. No, and that's
You're
exactly
spot
what I'm
on.
saying. Like,
Spot on.
It's 100% what's missing, and what I'm trying to say is it because of a lack of education? This is educational. This is something that a SaaS person. A lot of these SaaS guys, especially as we're talking about like SaaS to sales right now, like a lot of them were never professionally trained. They were, hey, I was customer success manager and suddenly I'm a sales guy. Or I came out of college and I picked up an account executive role and I just became a sales guy. But then they weren't given the proper training for weeks on end to learn how to be a sales guy. They're just thrown into fire and said, okay, if you know the product, if you can demo, and here's like the challenges, go sell and go figure it out. But that's fine. And that's okay in most cases if you have a good product and good word of mouth and track record. But the thing that they're missing even the most is, to me, like, they don't push. Like, salespeople don't push anymore these days. I don't know if you guys feel that at all. When's the last time you've gotten, like, you say no to someone and they come back and try to fire 5 more objections at you?
Yeah, it's definitely not as much.
Yeah,
but I mean,
I bet you when you were in sales,
there.
when someone said no, you didn't take no as a first answer. You'd say, but what about this? But what about that? What about this challenge?
You're going to kick me out of your office.
Yeah, exactly. You keep pushing until until they truly say no and they start really ignoring you. But I continue to challenge people and find ways to connect with them and find that pain point that really resonates.
Every once in a while, I see them getting like small yeses. Like we were on a demo call last week, right? And at the end of it, and this was a non-negotiable with us when I sold, was getting that next meeting booked.
Yes.
You see that still.
Yeah, you still see that, but that's because they made that a KPI. The whole business is part of the weird thing the SaaS company's done, and they've taken all the things of the steps and they've made them KPIs. Your KPI is that you have to get a certain percentage of sales on the call, certain percentage of people to book a next step, yada, yada, yada. This is good, effective sales and all that stuff, right? But it's not, is it? Is it really?
No, it's a fair point. It is KPI based now.
Last week when somebody was fighting my objections.
They were.
Yeah.
But did you appreciate them for that?
To a degree, yes. It actually, what they did a really good job on because of the objections and they didn't give up. They educated me more about what the company, it was Gartner, a consulting group. And
they're super annoying, but they have good salespeople.
Yeah. And this girl, Allie, like the first time I spoke to her, I told her like, look, way out of our budget and all of that. And she was like, well, like, what does your budget look like? Tell me, maybe I can put something together. Let me talk. You know, it was like,
you should hire her.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing that I didn't like, because I really told her, like, look, I'm a salesperson. I don't want to waste your time. I don't have the budget for this. Even if you cut it in half, because it was like 6-figure offering.
Yeah, Gartner is expensive.
Yeah, it's very expensive. I was like, I love what you're doing. I really appreciate it. It's just not that I don't want to, is I can do it. And then she kept being persistent. And I'm like, look, I don't want you to.
She's not listening. Like, she's not going to get the sale. Like,
yeah.
A no is okay. A no is great sometimes.
Yeah. So that was the reason I would say I wouldn't.
Okay, yeah.
But before that, the way she proceeded to expand the perception of the company, she did
some stuff really well, but sounds like that the other stuff's coachable.
And it was like the things you were talking about, what you said, like respectfully, she's being coached. You can see she's being role played because she was ready for everything I pushed back. It was kind of refreshing to see, honestly.
Nacelle is here with new AI tech. Read your customers' minds, isn't that the best? Turn browsers into buyers, collect your checks, showcase what they want through the product rec. Not your average, you may also like. Tracks the full customer journey on your site. From click to checkout, getting it right. From click to checkout, day or night. Nacelle makes your store smarter than ever. They personalize lives, isn't that clever? Providing smart segmentation that sells better. Deliver perfect picks to shoppers forever. Yeah. Visit Nacelle.com now.
All right, let's jump to the final part that I really want to jump into before we jump into, it looks like we've got Amara's book again, book corner here we're going to talk about. But before we jump into that, piece of advice. As we think about a piece of advice that we think that we can give a salesperson today, or a SaaS company, or someone trying to sell, or an e-commerce company trying to hire salespeople, what kind of advice can you provide to listeners here today?
I would say, I'm going to go first. I'm going to say, we've talked about this on a previous podcast about doing things that can't scale. And I think that's one reason why SaaS companies, for example, have leaned on AI automation, because you can scale that, but you can't scale the success of it.
Yeah.
So I think, like, when it comes to sales, sometimes, like, going the route John and I were talking about with people, building personal connections with us or all that stuff, in your mind, the modern day young salesperson's like, oh, I don't want to. I'm gonna have to, like, befriend Brian and shoot the shit with him, crap with him for a couple of months here. That to them takes up a lot of their time, even though it's going to be a more effective closure in regards to that sale. So personality doesn't scale, which is why you need to lean on it more than ever. And human connection doesn't scale, which is why you need to lean on it more than ever.
I hate to. I'm going to say the same thing that he is going to. I'm sorry.
I was going to say the same thing too. So
it's like I hate to. It's like I tell myself, we go to conferences and everything, and it's not to hunt, it's to build relationships. We've probably in the last 4 years maybe signed 6 to 8 people from conferences. Years later, and the whole pitch is getting them to know them and just letting them know we exist. I spoke to one client that we signed. They actually had a pain point, and they were expressing the pain point at the conference to me. And my question actually was to them, what would you wish they would have done? And he got into it, and I was like, well, we kind of do stuff like that too. I was like, whenever you're ready to look for another agency, if you give us a shot, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Dude. That is a perfect story to somebody. So at Commerce Roundtable, right? We have companies that sponsor and they come in. And one of the sponsors recently came to me and I said, hey, are you going to come join us? And they signed and they did. And they go, Jimmy, we got the lead list last year, but we haven't really turned anything out of that lead list. And I said, what did you do? And they were like, well, we emailed them all and said, we were a sponsor and this is what we do. Book a call with us today. And I said, you're doing it wrong. And he said, what do you mean? I said, here's why you're doing it wrong. You weren't going to the event to make sales. This ain't a direct response action. What you're doing is to meet the people, to get you to the appropriate people within the organization, to get you a warm introduction to that person so you can go in there and try to help identify a pain point that you could solve, and then you go through it. An event cycle lead, right? And I tell SaaS companies this all the time when I'm consulting for them, is average a 12-month cycle because it takes 12 months for you to warm up that relationship with that person. Most often not the right person to sell to, but you got to warm up the relationship to get enough to get into a warm introduction period to the next person. That might be it, but at the same time, you got to work through the organization and teach them and educate them and sell them. So what you're talking about right now is exactly spot on to that. It's like you have to be able to go into a mindset and realize that when you're hunting, you can't expect a direct response action, especially when you're selling a higher ticket priced item. You're not selling a transactional price. If you're buying a $100 product, Brian, you don't even want to talk to a salesperson. And if you do, you shouldn't be talking to them for more than 5 minutes. But if you're selling a high product, 20, 30, 50, 100 grand plus, dude, there's a lot of time and effort that's put into making that sale occur.
And here's a great example too, how we're going through the website transition now and paid ad transition, right? In the past year, before we were ready for those projects, I was getting hammered with cold emails from paid ad agencies and website agencies. The issue is, most brands will never go through and finalize a sales cycle through an agency or SaaS company until they reach a pain point or until they're ready to do so. So it's truly a waste of time trying to hit that home run cold sale outreach because the brand's not even looking for that right now, and you already know that going into the cold sales call, right? So it's like Commerce Roundtable, for example. Like I met Liam there at Applo. I already knew of him. You reached out to you about him. I already obviously knew Amir through here, but I've known Amir now for almost a year. I didn't hit him up until later to do the website, right? Same thing with Liam over there. By the time this episode comes out, we'll be fine. So I'm good with that. But the point is the direct sales expectations that these companies set in place aren't realistic because brands aren't ready until they know that they can take it on. So that's how important the relationship building is.
Brian will tell you, I've never pitched him to redo his website.
No, that's how it's supposed to be.
And I've never pitched Jimmy to buy our food.
You actually did. You sent me a sample package on the day one that he met me and tried to get me.
I've never pitched any of you.
But I declined it, and a year later of him just continuing to educate me about it, he sold me on it.
I've never pitched either of you to be BattleBox customers yet. Both of you are.
Yeah, there you go.
I got to cancel that, by the way. You got to remind me to cancel that.
All right. You guys, you said you had the similar thing. My only advice that I would give I have a different one is invest in education. Actually go invest in education. Send your salespeople to some kind of education, force them to go learn and be better and do sales training with them. Make them better sales humans because it will be worth 1,000-fold in value than anything you can do. I mean, I even look at you, Amir, like go take your people and get them to go learn some methodology. Not do with you. I'm not talking about you. I know you're great and all that stuff, but like go third party objective. They'll role play. They'll do different things. When I was in car sales, dude, like when I wanted to go do something, I was sent off for 2 weeks to some place, and all we did was literally, hi, my name is Jimmy. Hi, my name is Brian. Hi, my name is this. And we would go through it, and they would just try to throw a curve. I'm just looking. No problem, sir. Can I ask you what kind of car you're looking for? And you're like, well, I'm just looking for SUV. Well, I'm not going to bother you, but I just want to guide you and show you. And I would love to just tell you about some of the things that are happening right now, or maybe point you to some of the more popular models so you can save time and do that. Is that okay? Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, come on, walk with me just for a little bit and let's talk about it. It was very often that someone came in and said, I want a black car with a sunroof. They left a purple car with yellow with no sunroof. Like that was a normal thing for me because I was able to build rapport and trust by showing him and disarming them. Because, dude, most people get armed up when they hear, and that's why I asked like about the AE title. Most people see that AE title, and the guards go freaking up, and that's what education can help you do. And in SaaS, especially if you're trying to sell into e-commerce, especially right now, or it doesn't matter if it's e-commerce, any business. Dude, it's harder than ever because there's more than ever, and there's more people fighting for the attention. Stand out. And the way you stand out is be well educated and be a better professional. Not only will it do better in your job, but you will become better and more seasoned in the future. All right, Amer, let's move off to the final segment of this pod today. Amer's Book Corner. Let's talk, man. You got one called $100 Million Offers. Let's talk about it.
Are you guys familiar with the book?
He's a big fan of the guy.
Do you know the book? Alex Hormozi? Yeah.
That's his book corner today.
You don't like Alex?
No.
Why?
Hates him.
Alex has a mixed audience, but apparently you're a big fan.
No, I'm not a big fan. I actually.
You must love his book because it's in
From
your
Phil
book.
Knight
Yeah.
to Alex
So
Hormozi.
here's the reason I'm sharing it.
Okay, sure.
In 2022 going into 23, I recognized what I shared with you guys before. I needed to become a sales organization. So I went and started to read a ton of sales books to get different perspectives. Now, I don't agree with a lot of things that people say. Actually, I'm not fond of his marketing, rather to say, and the way he talks. But in the book, he made me think about different things. Are we doing something wrong? Are we doing something right? And I actually didn't read the book. I did the audiobook and he was narrating it. I actually really, really enjoyed it, the way he narrated, the way he got into it, and the way he broke everything down. So basically his whole thing is trying to get you to understand how you can position a perceived value. The book is essentially about that. And the way he really kind of breaks it down is he has this equation, like figure out what your prospect dream value is, then talk to them about what the likelihood of achieving that outcome that they want and align with them on it, and then how long is it going to take to get there, and then ultimately talk about how much effort and time and investment from a resource perspective are they going to need. And the way he talks about and uses the examples of his fitness company, actually his failures to make payroll and everything he talks about, it makes you think, and it's very relatable. And now what he put in that book, I don't think it's necessarily perfectly applicable to us, but there's a lot of these points where I'm like, hey, that makes sense. How can we position this way? Or it's like, hey, I'm doing this, but I think I kind of felt a little bit short here. His big push and his big argument is don't become a commodity in your market, which I 100% agree with, meaning don't battle price, battle value. Because if you battle value and you push value, you're going to stand out. Your price is not going to make you stand out because there's always going to be somebody cheaper. And I think he did a really kind of a good job in that. He talks about really like a lot of like premium pricing. He talks about kind of like risk reversals. Can you provide guarantees, money backs? Easing people, and actually what you guys talk about, how do you get ready for those objections? And as those objections come, adding them to your process, and instead of your prospect bringing it up, you become straightforward with it. It's like, hey, I know you might be worried about this. This is how we're going to address it. And as you're going and learning about your prospect, you can really create a great playbook, to your point, to your entire team, that they can really follow and start to scale. It's really like a scalable sales process, I would say. And I think it's great, really, really great, especially for people that don't know where to start.
That's great. No, I've heard mixed results about the book, but I do know that one thing that Alex is good at is really good at writing and storytelling. And so it sounds like you got really hooked by it. And that's just the art of sales, storytelling at the end of the day.
What'd you grade it?
Wow, you grade a lot of things really high. You got to get on the Portnoy scale, man.
No. Here's the thing.
You got to lower that threshold down a little bit, buddy.
I'm
9.8 last book, 9.75 this book. What does it take to get like a 9?
I'm sharing books that I really like right now. I'm going to get into some books eventually.
Oh, like a bad one?
Yeah, like a bad one. Like I don't want to be like.
Oh well, no. Do we want him to share bad books? No, we don't want you to. Okay, we'll actually stay on the 9.8. Okay,
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I guess that's fair.
No, there's a couple of books that I read that have like 2 really good chapters. I would recommend it, but the rest of the book sucks.
But as long as you get one strong point out of a book, isn't that the whole point of a good book?
Then it's fine. Yeah.
It is, yeah.
So,
What I usually do, by the way, when I read books, and I would suggest to everybody, I read the most interesting chapter, and then if that chapter really hooks me, that I think is going to be.
How do you know what's the most interesting chapter?
Because I'll read the titles of chapters.
So the title is what's going to capture you to go read a chapter, and if you don't like that chapter, then it's dead.
Yeah, it doesn't really. Yeah, I like to get to that point because sometimes like somebody will recommend a book and I'll ask them like, what did you love the most about it? Oh, this and this. Like, where was it? They'll say, oh, that was chapter 6. Okay, let me read about it and see how well it's.
No, I do the same thing with like the author of it. So like I would have saw that was written by Alex Hormozi and I would have threw it away.
I wonder if you can go ChatGPT and be like, give me 2 pages total summary of everything important from a book.
Or you could just tell ChatGPT in 1,500 words or 1,000 words, tell me the entire narrative of the book. And you can get the whole book down these days. So that's a whole different story. Once we get into that, the next topic, it's actually a great topic where we're going to be talking about AI a little bit more here. So let's wrap this thing up. Episode 31, the sales, the dying art or a rising need. I think we went a little deep in all sorts of ways around sales, but what we've recognized is very simple. There's a challenge. There's a problem going on in this market. And I think that it's up to the business leaders to make a decision and change in order to make this better, or else you're just going to have a continuous dying art that's continuing to happen here. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend. Let us know what you think about our podcast. Follow us on TikTok, X, IG. Well, TikTok might not exist at this point when it released.
We'll find out.
I don't know. YouTube, just type in Awesome Pod to find us. And don't forget to leave us a review on your favorite streaming platform. Remember, we're a video first podcast. We fly location to location to shoot this together. We do this not only for the dynamics of the pod, but also because we want the highest quality experience. And so check us out on YouTube. And don't forget to check us up and subscribe to us on awesomepod.com. Website's really cool, but we also leave really cool hot takes that I think you will enjoy. We'll be back next week with episode number 33. It's about the future of AI and its effects on e-commerce in 2025. We look really forward to talking about this one. With that, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next pod. Point.
Welcome to the Awesome Pod, where we talked a lot. E-com was the path that we walked a lot. But now the question is, will you subscribe or not? Ha!